is how do you find everyday ways to feel creative? And a lot of that can come in the simplest of ways. You're building a deck. You're sending an email to a client and you're like, the creativity in how you're crafting an argument, that's creativity. It might not be traditional in how you think about it, but it genuinely is creative because you're working a muscle to help someone understand an argument that you have or a position that you have on something. And you have to find the most creative way to make that argument. That's creativity. It's really simple, but it's true.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley in partnership with Tech, sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest Labs, Synergy Global, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, Birthright Excel, Serona Partners, and in media partnership with C-Tech. Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. This is all about creativity. Meet Carolina Cruz-Letelier, partner and managing director of MUH-TAY-ZIK HOF-FER. She has been with the agency for nearly 9 years, starting out in 2011 as an account manager and now serving as managing director and partner. Prior to joining M&H, Carolina had a 2-year stint at Goodby Silverstein Partners, working on Chevrolet and Denny's. Before her time at GS&P, she worked at Fuse TV and ad sales, helping to create and build integrated programs for clients such as Burger King, Kia Motors, and Mars. Carolina is passionate about leading her teams, and being an empathetic leader is ingrained in who she is. So she thinks she would be a great guest to speak about how marketing and agency teams should be treating each other and their relationships with clients, and on her career and how she rose to become a partner at the agency. Carolina, if we're looking at creativity, and you've held numerous positions across entertainment and different businesses in the worlds of creativity and sales, and now most recently managing director and partner at MUH-TAY-ZIK HOF-FER. And so, before we even dive into your own particular career, shine some light for me about what creativity means for you.
Ooh, I love that question. I think when we're talking about creativity and it relates to the business that we're doing with the clients that we're leading, it's just trying to make it a world where we can find the best ways for brands to actually outlast culture and make an impact that people are going to resonate with. I feel like creativity can take many different forms too, and I think that's the fun part of what we do in advertising is it can be a lot of different things, and it's just about brands willing to embrace that creativity can be anything, and really non-traditional paths can make the most impact.
Right. Now, is creativity, you've been in creativity for quite some time. If we're looking at leadership within creativity, how does that look like? I understand, in software development, I understand in building companies, but becoming a leader in the domain of creativity, does that mean that you're necessarily just more creative than other people, that you understand the world better? What does leadership and creativity look like?
I actually don't think that it means that I'm more creative or less creative than anybody else. I'm on the business side of things. So typically we're thought of in the creative industry as less creative because we don't have creative in our title. I actually think it's, I know it's really funny, right? I actually think a lot of it is more about creativity and the forms that it takes and what it takes to actually create safe spaces for people to be creative and wacky and wild and dream up all these things. And really, I think that's what the big tension is right now in creativity in our world is creating safe spaces for people to feel like they can just bring ideas that have never been thought of or pressure test and have these collaborative moments with people in ways that don't feel like they're tension-filled rooms with one alpha that is telling you what needs to happen. It's about open space and allowing people to just be themselves and bring all of that to all of the creative work that they're doing every day.
So, put me into the room where, we're figuring out, a solution to something, and we're coming up with a creative process, and somebody has found a way to take their own creative selves and input that into a story or into an idea. Now they're presenting it to a group of people, let's say a board, or let's say just a group of advisors that are going to give feedback on this idea. How can they do that? They're not in that person's shoes. They don't necessarily understand the whole inner work that went into this.
Yeah.
How does feedback work in this creative world?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with how you're even bringing the creative to the table when you're sitting in those rooms.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it in our world is working collaboratively with our strategists who bring all of the rationale and the reasoning for why an idea is incredibly brilliant, making sure that the creative human who's bringing those ideas forward is working collaboratively with those strategists to make sure that when they're bringing those ideas to board members who, for example, if you're creating a product and it's for Gen Z, but you're sitting in a room with a whole lot of older humans who may not really understand what that audience is all about, it's finding ways to help them understand the magic and the brilliance of the creativity that's being presented in the room by giving them a lens to understand that audience. And I think that's the responsibility of all the creatives who are all around the idea, but making sure that we can make those ideas really come to life in a way that resonates with people who may not understand the audience that it's for. And I think that's the biggest challenge is finding ways to bring that nuance to life for people who may not sit in those shoes every day, which I think is a really hard thing about the industry.
Right. So go back with me to your personal journey, getting into creativity, into the business side of creativity. What is your story?
Yeah. My story's, I feel like my story is non-traditional. And then the more often I talk to people, they're like, oh yeah, it was exactly the same for me. So I went to high school in South Texas, in a little town called McAllen, and I took a journalism class, and I was on the yearbook staff. Like, I just like to tell stories. It was just what it was for me. I didn't even realize advertising was a thing, to be totally honest. It just wasn't an option for me. I ended up going to school in Boston and at Boston University, and there I ended up rooming with a bunch of people who were in the advertising program. I was actually studying film and television because I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to write for TV. So I think I've always been in this creative world, just didn't really understand what advertising could mean for me. And then just through the relationships that I built with my community within the comm school there, started to understand that this was a thing, but still didn't really fully buy into it. I graduated early, moved to New York with my girlfriends who were all going to work in advertising. And I was like, advertising, oh, that looks intense and crazy. And I don't really know about that. So I ended up working in ad sales at a company called Fuse, which was awesome because it was a music company. So, you're just surrounded by really brilliant people, just really creative, thinking about how to bring brands and music closer together. So that was an interesting place to just learn how to even have that dynamic of trying to impact people's day-to-day lives through really small moments and how they're watching music television. Like, what a weird thing to think about. And then I moved to San Francisco chasing a boy. And when I got here, relationship building is as key in everything that you're doing every single day. So I had a connection who worked at Goodby, and she was like, you need to meet these people. They're great. And I was like, I don't know advertising. I don't really get it. It's not really for me. It seems intense. And then I took a meeting. I was like, I'll just meet some people. And I was really young too. So the doors were all open. And I was like, let me just see what this is about. I've heard of Goodby, but I don't know anything about them. Fast forward, I met the most amazing people of my life. They've fully influenced everything that I do. And Goodby is a ridiculously amazing creative agency for somebody who's really young, because you really understand how that world works. And then here I am. And then 2 years later, I joined a small agency and have just grown up there and had to learn how this world works under two incredible founders who kind of took me under their wing and helped me learn everything. So it's been wild. An accident.
It definitely sounds like it. Take me back to Goodby, and you're talking about getting into the advertising space and the creativity space. What are you surprised by? What are some of those surprising moments that left you thinking like, wow, like I'm learning something here that I really didn't expect to be learning?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing for me, my 2 quick years at Goodby was how smart people could really be and how kind they could be in these rooms where we know we're challenging our clients to do things that are unexpected and brave, and what it really takes to craft those conversations in a way that is meaningful. And I think the thing for me was kindness. Like, there was no ego in the rooms that I was in. We were all genuinely on a team together trying to figure out how to craft our story so that we can make sure that our clients understood why we were tackling their challenges a certain way. And I think, I don't know why, but from the world of sales where everything's incredibly competitive, coming into a creative field where people were genuinely on one team trying to make shit happen was, for me, like an eye-opening moment where I was like, you can be in a room with people and be like, let's do this together. Like, it's great. And doing like really fun, creative, big things, which I think was actually super fun when you're like in your late 20s. You're like, let's like throw cars off of bungee jumps. Like, let's do that. That sounds great.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Okay, so tell me about the last 10 years. You're mentioning that you're joining these founders, you're growing within the organization. You know, it's all happening, you know, sort of by accident, but you're absorbing the world around you, you're advancing with it, you're gaining a knowledge and understanding about it. What were these 10 years like? What did you learn in these 10 years?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for the last 10 years of just working really closely with founders, very entrepreneurial founders as well, is I've soaked up some of that. So understanding that you are fully in control of everything that you can do, understanding how to have the right relationships in the room, how to read a room, EQ is so critical when you're talking to, because a lot of the relationships we were forming in those first few years were with startup founders in the Silicon Valley as well, trying to like get their shit up and running, and we're looking for an agency who is small enough to help them on their journey. And I think a lot of it for me was running at a problem and not running away from it. Because when you're a really small company, you don't have an army of people behind you. So you have to be on the front lines and understanding how to do a little bit of everything. And I think that's really the thing that for me has been the most meaningful in my career is wanting to learn enough and be curious enough to know how to have a conversation about every little nuance in the industry and not rely on everybody around me to do it, because we might only be 10 people. So you kind of have to know how to do it all, enough of it all, and knowing when to lean on the experts to actually bring something in and land it. Because I think it's a team sport. All in all, it's a team sport.
Right. Now you've held 7 positions, at least according to LinkedIn. Obviously, these are just titles, but over the last 10 years, or 10 and a half years, you've really grown with the organization and grew yourself, you know, as a leader, from a account manager, account supervisor, account director, group account director, director of client services, partner, director of client services, and managing director and partner. You know, this show is about leadership in the end, and you know that begs the question of, how do you grow as a leader within an organization like this, a very entrepreneurial organization, not coming from this world, having just 2 years prior to that in a similar space. But still growing as a leader there. What is their story? What's happening there?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the leaders within our organization themselves are always looking to build others around them up. So you're trying to build the next generation at all points. And I think that's really critical, because when we're a small organization, you can't be in every room. So you have to build a team around you that you trust and give them the room to actually do what they want to do and do it really well. And I think a lot of our success has come from the fact that while we're a small team, we build a level of trust in our folks so that they can go and run and do what they do best, and not feel like they're micromanaged in any way. And I think that's where you tend to get people who can be really highly valuable to an organization, is you give them the room, and then let them fail. And that's okay. You learn a lot from failure as well. And I think that's something that we don't shy away from that, because if you're not failing, then you're never going to really win, because you have to learn from every single moment and every interaction.
Right. If you had to think back to the biggest challenge you've had in the growing pains of becoming an executive within an organization like this, growing from Super V to supervisor, what were those challenges like? Yeah,
I think a lot of the challenges, and I think about this a lot right now because I have a team of people who are going through it actively. Like, I'm an account soup, but I want to be an account director. What does it look like? And there's a lot of tactical things on a sheet of paper, which is that needs to happen. But when you're talking about leadership, I think a lot of it is more about knowing how to identify what the strengths are in those around you, how to work through people's things that need to be worked on, and how to help build them up. And I think a lot of the challenges that I've faced is just making sure that we're always considering the people and making sure that we're taking care of those people. And I think in the last 2 years, that's been even more emblematic. So for us, a lot of those challenges have come in really heavily in the last 2 years. It's just understanding, what does leadership mean now when we're faced with the greatest turmoil that probably all of us have ever had to face, and making sure that our people still feel really cared for, and then ensuring that at every level, anybody who has people reporting into them can take what we're doing up here and that level of care, and making sure that every single person's feeling that from someone above them, because that's how we create an organization that people want to stick around at and create their best work at. And I think that's where you get to the best creativity, is when people feel cared for and safe. And that's when you're going to get the crazy things that brands are looking for.
One of the things that you mentioned that I loved is that you thrive in chaos and you're comfortable wearing many hats. A crisis negotiator, peacemaker, and master of communication.
True.
I love that. First of all, I really love that. And the thriving in chaos, and tying back to this idea of creativity. Loop me in there.
I mean, I live it every day, so we could have a 3-hour conversation about it. I think the reality is, brands and big brands, small brands, we'll talk about the work for a second. Big brands, small brands, they have a lot going on within their organizations. They don't have to worry about creativity every day. That's why they have people like us. We actually can be the ones to push them on the creativity side of things. But sometimes the chaos just comes from trying to find the 1 hour in their day to say, like, okay, let's put everything else aside and just think about the creativity needed to move your brand forward based on the challenge that we're all working through right now. So that's like your everyday chaos. And then I think the other thing is, and again, not to go back to the last 2 years, and because it's always been a constant, but when you're trying to do incredibly creative things, there's a lot of people involved. You have production houses and music houses and research companies and all kinds of things. And I think it's getting all of those things to come together and there's always a state of chaos, and just making sure that everything all the connection points come to a place where you're landing the plane, so to say, and ideas are coming to life the way that you've imagined them to be. And so that state of chaos is constant, but it's good chaos. Like, you want to be in the thick of all of that madness, because I think that's where a lot of the brilliance comes from.
I love it. Carolina, I really want to finish the conversation about creativity and about leadership, taking a little bit step further. Right now, it feels to me that creativity and working in creativity is sort of meant for some people, and then there's the majority of others, which is just not creative. And anything in any position that requires creativity, if we don't have creativity in our title, we sort of stay away from it. I can share that about myself. I don't want that.
Either.
I want to be able to exert creativity in things that I do without having the pressure of titling myself creative or not creative. That puts a lot of pressure. So give me your 2 cents about this, our ability to be creative without necessarily the title of creative.
Yeah. I mean, I consider myself that person too. And a lot of the humans on my team who are business minded see themselves the same way. I think creativity doesn't have to exist in these big moments where you're writing scripts and directing different content pieces and things. I think it can come in the really small moments. We talk a lot about that at our agency is how do you find everyday ways to feel creative? And a lot of that can come in the simplest of ways. You're building a deck. You're sending an email to a client and you're like, the creativity in how you're crafting an argument, that's creativity. It might not be traditional in how you think about it, but it genuinely is creative because you're working a muscle to help someone understand an argument that you have or a position that you have on something, and you have to find the most creative way to make that argument. That's creativity. It's really simple, but it's true. My CFO is always like, there's creativity everywhere, even in the numbers and the financials. And I'm like, oh, that's scary. But it's true. I mean, like, you look at a different report and you slice it a different way, and that's creativity. What am I trying to show? And then how do I get that across to our audience in the most impactful way? That's creativity. I think the word is loaded for a lot of reasons because you have a lot of powerful humans who are doing truly creative things. But I also love that in 2022 and beyond, creativity can be defined in a million different ways. And it doesn't have to be in traditional senses. And I think that's actually what's exciting, is that I don't even know what creativity is going to be in 10 years, but I'm like here for it.
I don't know what it's going to be in 10 years, but I'm here for it. Carolina, thank you so much for joining me, for taking the time to share with me your perspective, your personal journey, and everything in between. So thank you very, very much, and continue on your amazing journey, and stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you. It's been amazing. Thank you so much.